This is the Ancient and Medieval History Lecture for Wednesday, the 23rd of February, 2022. I don't think what you can do is take that regular notes. Try to find them. If not, during study class, we'll see if I can do something. Okay. Just use your regular notes today. Shh. Chase, you're talking and you don't have your notes in. Jesus existed. Historical figure. Pilate existed. Notes. Ah, got it. Good. Didn't see it. Yeah. So there was a historical figure that the story of Christ is based on. Whether you acknowledge him as the Messiah or as a prophet or as something else, that's up to you. But there was a historical figure. And unlike Alexa, who, if you ask her who Jesus Christ was, and she says, quote, a mythological figure, unquote, and if you ask her who the Prophet Muhammad was, and she then goes into an extolation of Islamic belief, I wouldn't necessarily trust the computer to tell you truth from falsehood.
Well, I never trust those things. They're listening.
That's good. They shouldn't be listening, but of course they are. We are studying Christianity because the beliefs about Jesus changed the world. Jesus was crucified according to Christian belief in the year 33, Anno Domini. That is the year of our Lord 33. Of course, modern secularists say it's the CE 33, the Common Era. Common Era and Christian Era are exactly the same. So remember, I use AD, BC. You can use whatever system you want. If it makes you feel somehow more virtuous, go ahead. Yeah.
I like how they changed it according. Like, they changed the names, but they didn't change the years, because it still revolves around.
Yeah. And that's, look, I'm a Christian, I'm a Westerner. I personally don't think you can divorce Christianity from Western civilization and retain Western civilization. I don't think freedom can exist without some form of Judeo-Christian values. Having said that, at least the French revolutionaries, who you'll learn about next year, had the courage of their convictions. They started out with year zero, the year of the French Revolution. Many communists, when they take over, try to establish a new calendar. This was done in Cambodia. Again, I think it was 1975 was the year zero, the year that the Anka, the Khmer Rouge, took over Cambodia. And they purport to start a new dating system. That, at least, is honest. The CE, to me, has always seemed mealy-mouthed. Because, well, we don't want to be too Christian because that might offend somebody. So we'll just use the same name, same year with different name. That's why I make fun of it all the time. So, what happens? Christianity on Sunday morning, year 33, according to our understanding, sees every Christian in the world in a single basement room. And they're not happy. Jesus, just a week ago, had arrived in Jerusalem on the back of a donkey, proclaiming his messiahhood, and they expected to be in on the new world. They were friends of the Messiah. And when the Messiah brought about the change every Jew expects, they expected to be deep in his counsels and high and standing and a bunch of other things they expected to get. They also expected to serve, but they expected to get by being a friend of Jesus. And then this train wreck of a Holy Week, from their point of view, ends in Jesus suffering the death of a criminal. Luckily, it was an unusually rapid crucifixion, where he was stabbed through the heart with a spear and taken down and entombed just 3 hours after he was crucified. As I've tried to tell you, crucifixion usually lasts many, many days. and then the body stays up there until it literally falls apart, and then it stays at the foot of the cross. It's a message. They're conveying power. Bless you. We can do this to people who mess with us. Don't mess with us. That's what crucifixion is. Almost as if, in the modern day, you had a weasel little prime minister of a northern democracy who seizes emergency powers and punishes peaceful civil rights protesters by seizing their bank accounts, sending in horse police that trample people, and has his officials talking about getting long-term revenge on anyone who even said anything nice about them on social media. That would ever really happen. Punishment and terror are forms of communication. Political leaders have always understood this. So Jesus' crucifixion happens because the Jewish priesthood of the time wants an example made of Jesus. They don't want to just sentence him to blasphemy and death by stoning. No, they want him to suffer a conspicuously horrific death. So all of this seems to happen. And now Jesus is dead. He's in a tomb. The authorities probably are out hunting for him or his followers. Peter denied knowing Jesus 3 times that night because he was afraid of the crowd blaming him and arresting him and punishing him. So they're dispirited, they're angry, they're frustrated, they're depressed, they're lost. A couple of women go out to check on the tomb, put flowers down, and they come back. The stone has been rolled away. It's not an easy thing to do. The tomb is empty. And they report this beautiful man of light, who might be an angel of God, saying that Jesus has gone on. Gone on? Peter gets up and, in a mixture of hope and fear, runs as fast as he can to the cemetery, to the tomb, and himself encounters the reality of the empty tomb. The angel's words seem to indicate that Christ is risen, which is the traditional Easter greeting. Christ is risen. You say, and they say in response, somebody who's also a Christian, Christ is risen indeed. People have died in Soviet Russia for saying that on Easter, because the communist regime there was atheistic, and professing Christianity in public in certain times was a death penalty offense. Strange things begin to happen. A couple of apostles are walking away from Jerusalem on a road to Emmaus. And on this road, they encounter a traveler who starts talking to them. And this traveler is so engaging, they talk the entire afternoon. They stop for the evening, and they have dinner around a fire, and they're talking in the evening. And then they realize all the time, this is Jesus that's been with them. And the moment they realize that, he's gone. What does that mean? I mean, if anyone knew Jesus, these guys would know Jesus. The belief of the church is that the risen Christ looks a little different, seems a little different than Christ the man. I presume, being people of your age, that you've all taken photographs of yourself for your social media. Selfies, they were called. I don't know if they're still called that. And therefore, you understand that you have a good angle and you have a bunch of bad angles, and you don't want to take a picture of yourself like from down here, looking right up your nostrils. That's not an attractive look for most people. You don't want to take a picture too close or too far. You want to get the right angle, and then you've got to, if you're one of these happy people that smile in pictures, which I try not to be, you got to find a smile. An authentic
I
smile.
just did it. Smile.
A smile. Yeah. That doesn't look like you're grinding your teeth ready to bite someone. So you know that there are different ways that you can be depicted in photographs just by the angle of the shot and the lighting and all the rest, clothing you're wearing and so forth. Imagine Jesus without any of the downsides of mortality, without the aches and pains, waking up from sleeping on the ground in the morning, without the breath that you have if you don't properly brush your teeth, and nobody did in those days, without all of the human stuff. It isn't necessarily going to look the same. Throughout the next few weeks, Jesus comes again and again and again to the apostles and the disciples, teaching them. They are amazed that he was dead and now he's here, and he teaches them that he is resurrected. He was dead, and like Lazarus, only more so, he's alive again. Now remember I told you that Jesus' real students was not the crowds. It wasn't the miracles he did for the multitudes. It was the apostles and the disciples, the people who closely followed him, the people who gave up their life in order to become his followers. He spends time with them, teaching them about life, languages, the truth of his coming. And then on Pentecost, he ascends into heaven and will come again in glory. That's the belief. Christians believe this. They believe that for several weeks a dead man came back and instructed his closest followers in what he wanted them to do. Now, if you don't believe that, you don't believe that. But you can test any belief by what it does to the believer. You can test any idea or any ideology by what it does to the ideologue. People who adopt communism tend to become sanctimonious and judgmental and vicious towards the current order. And, oh, we're going to build paradise, and if we have to kill our way to paradise, so be it. Different beliefs tend to produce different things. Somebody adopts a Buddhist belief, they might become more peaceful. They might be willing to compromise more. They might be willing to become a vegetarian. They might be willing to not have to win every argument that they're in. Whether or not you believe in Jesus, the close followers of Christ in just a few weeks go from being a dispirited band in a basement to become people who are willing to go out into the world and proclaim in the temple, which some do, in Jerusalem, in Galilee, and ultimately throughout the world, the good news of Jesus is coming. These are not people who are still afraid to die. They'll mostly die martyrs, killed for their faith by unbelievers, killed for their faith by people who wanted to silence them. Oh, you're a follower of Christ? Well, follow him onto a cross. Jesus' followers have the courage to face this, even to court it, by proclaiming bravely. Now, the saying also goes that many of Jesus' followers in the time of the early church did minor miracles, healed and drove out demons and stuff like that in Jesus' name. Another thing is that the followers of Jesus who go out and proclaim as the basis of the Christian faith speak in tongues. Now, I think what it originally meant was they had the ability to communicate with people from Ethiopia, who were the first organized Christian church in the world, from Persia, from Greece, from Rome, that they could go out and speak to people and understand them. Now, does that mean that they magically knew their languages? Boy, that would be cool. But no, it probably meant that they had a gift for learning languages. And these guys aren't educated men. They're fishermen, mostly. I'm an educated man. I'm terrible at languages. I mean, I passed high school Spanish for 2 years, barely, with D's and D minuses, enough to get my graduation. I could never have been a successful student at this school. The math would have killed me, and the language requirements would have killed me. I would have been fine in art and English and history especially. But no, the other things, gone. You all amaze me with your ability to do all this stuff. It's like juggling all sorts of different things. These men were able to communicate not only in the languages of people all around that part of the world where Europe, Asia, and Africa meet, they were able to persuade enough people so that when they died, Christian communities had already popped up all over the center of the old world, the crossroads of the old world. Again, while Rome still persecuted Christians and the Persians still persecuted Christians too, or at least were Zoroastrians, long before Muhammad was even born, Christians established a national church in Ethiopia, in the uplands of the source of the Blue Nile. Are these the same men that, like Peter, said, no, I don't know him? That ran when the temple priests came after Jesus? They had changed. They had changed. And early on, when almost everyone came to Christianity, not through birth, but through conversion as an adult of some kind, Christianity tended to change all of its followers, which is one of the things that scared the Romans. You've got a person who's this way all their life, their family is this way too, and suddenly they've become a Christian and they're totally different. It seemed like a cult. In fact, to the Romans, it was a cult. So whether you believe in the resurrection or in Jesus teaching his followers during the weeks afterwards, or that he arose to heaven visibly in body, and the promise that he will come again, Jesus gave a great commission. Remember, Jesus had 2 commandments. Love God above all others and love your neighbor as yourself. That's his summation of the 10 commandments. But Jesus also had what is called the Great Commission. And what the Great Commission is, go out into the world and make new Christians. Go out into the world and make new Christians. Go out into the world and make new Christians. All Christians, in their own way, are supposed to be evangelists. An evangelist is somebody who spreads the faith. So, one of the things Jesus says as his risen self is going up into heaven, even more risen, is this great commission: go out into the world and make new Christians, spread the faith. Let's see how this works. First of all, back in Judea, there were relatives of Jesus. Later they are called the Desposyni, dispossessed. The Desposyni, or the dispossessed, expect that being relatives of Jesus, they will be the leaders of Christianity. Remember, relatives of Moses, through his brother Aaron, become the temple priests of the Jews. They are the house of Levi. They are Levite priests. So, wouldn't it be true for the successor of Judaism, for Christianity, for the relatives of Jesus, people who carry the blood of Mary and Joseph, to be his chief followers? And this included St. James, who is either Jesus' brother or his close relative, his cousin or whatever. They expect that Christianity will reform the Jewish faith, and they expect to be the leaders, and that doesn't happen. Neither of those things happen. Because And slowly they die out. I mean, there may be people that to this day that carry the blood of Mary and Joseph in them, somewhere in their genetic heritage. That's entirely possible. But as a community, the Desposyni die out around the time of the Islamic conquests, at least as far as I know. One of the reasons for this is that the Jews as a whole never accept Jesus as their Messiah, because Jesus does not fit the description. I've talked about this. Does Jesus come with fire and lightning and power to conquer the world for the righteous chosen people of God? No. He does not come with the wizardry that they expect. He doesn't come as a king. He doesn't come as a lord. He doesn't come as a judge. He doesn't come as a warrior. He comes as a preacher, a teacher, a healer, a revelation, a sacrifice. He does not come the way the Jews expect. So it should not surprise you that most Jews say, maybe he was a prophet, but he's certainly not the Messiah. They believe that. In fact, a few Jews see Christianity as a threat. One of them is a Roman citizen of the Jewish community of Tarsus in Cilicia, which is today southern Turkey. Saul of Tarsus, who ends up working for the Sanhedrin. Saul of Tarsus puts Judas Iscariot's replacement on trial for crimes against the faith and has him executed. Saul is personally responsible for the death of at least one Christian, St. Stephen, and probably is responsible for the destruction and death of many other Christians, men, women, and children. Saul is a true believing Pharisee that the Christians are an affront to God by distorting Jewish doctrine, and that they must be destroyed. They must be punished. They must be punished in such a way that it's public. They must be destroyed. You might want to put it all away. Wait, thank you. See, if I don't notice, it's not really a problem. If I do. So, Saul is given a job. Peter, that fisherman scum follower of Jesus, has gone to Antioch in Syria. And he's preaching to the Jews there, and a lot of them are converting. So Saul is given a mission. Go to Antioch and destroy the Christians there. And Saul says, hoorah! Yeah! And he goes on the road to Damascus. But on the road to Damascus, he ends up falling off of his horse and hitting his head on a rock. He wakes up in a bed. People have brought him to safety, and they're tending to him. But he can't see. He's blind. He's not the first person to come to faith through an injury. He is in bed for quite some time, for months. And in that time, he claims he hears a voice. Why do you persecute my children? Why do you persecute my people? And he believes that it's the voice of God, the voice of Christ. When he emerges and when he recovers his sight, he's a changed man. He even changes his name, like Abram becomes Abraham, like Sarai became Sarah. Saul of Tarsus becomes Paul. And Paul is going to serve the Christian community. In fact, Paul believes that he has been given an apostleship, the only apostleship given after Jesus' death and resurrection, because Paul has a special mission. Paul speaks very good Greek because he grew up in a Greek town. Tarsus was Greek. Paul is a Roman citizen. Paul is educated. Paul understands the Jewish temple priesthood. Paul is everything that the people who went and followed Jesus in the flesh weren't, except maybe Matthew. And Matthew was compromised because he was a tax collector. Paul, after becoming a Christian and being accepted by St. Peter and by the church at Antioch, says that he has a mission, a vocation, a mission from God to go out into the world and preach to Gentiles, not Jews, pagans, Greeks, Romans, Samaritans. This is shocking because the early Christians before Paul assumed that Christ came to save the chosen people. But Paul's revelation seems true. And they say, okay, give it a try, in so many words. It's not like the early church completely backs Paul, but they allow him to go on his ministry. And he goes several times out into the Greek world. And he talks to Jewish communities, and he talks to Greeks. And suddenly, both Jews who are surrounded by Greek culture, which is not the Jews of Palestine, and Greeks begin coming to Christ in droves. Why? Look, you have read the Greek classics, many of them. You've read the Iliad, the Odyssey, I'm sure several other things Mrs. Solzvik has had you read, or Ms. Nitty. No, not Nitty. Kirsch, your other English teacher. And I'm sure you were as thrilled by them as I was when I first read the Greek myths. But is that going to really satisfy you when you have a relative who's dying? Or when you encounter a baby for the first time? Or when you fall in love, you decide you want to be with this person forever? Maybe this person betrays you, maybe this person doesn't. In the big questions in life, do the Greek myths satisfy? Well, if you're a heroic manly man like Achilles or Odysseus, yes. But not everyone is a heroic manly man. Not everyone's even a man, thank God. And not everyone is strong all the time. Everyone is weak at some point or other. The Greek people, by the time of Christ, were no longer thrilled with Olympian paganism. Many of the elite Greeks had gone over to a form of monotheism, which says that there's a great maker, an engineer who designs the perfect world, and that we live in an echo reality of that world. So they're Platonists. They follow ideas of Plato. The Greeks, and by extension many Romans, are hungering for meaning because the old answers don't satisfy them anymore. The old answers are not giving them comfort. They're not giving them a foundation that allows them to face life with courage. The Christian message does. One God loves the world so much, he sends part of himself to become flesh, to live a normal life, and then die for our sins. A life of healing and teaching, and that appeals. But Paul encounters a problem pretty darn quickly. I'm going to tell you, an adult man does not want to get circumcised. Nobody, in fact, would want their most delicate parts operated on with scalpels. Furthermore, adults don't necessarily want to start eating kosher. They like shellfish and pork and other things that you're not supposed to have. Today, a modern delicacy, the American cheeseburger, is absolutely not kosher because you're not supposed to simultaneously consume dairy and meat. You don't want to bathe the beast in the blood, in the milk of its mother as you're eating its blood. I'm getting around the edge of the quote without saying it exactly, but the idea of eating a cheeseburger is you have a mother's milk, cow milk, turned into cheese, unless you're eating processed cheese food, in which case you're eating the product of a factory, and you're eating the meat of a cow. To the Jews, that seemed immoral, and that's against kosher rules. Yes?
What if you have goat cheese?
That's an interesting question. I would ask a rabbi about that. What?
Isn't it any dairy? Like,
I think it's any dairy.
I think it's like any dairy.
Yeah.
You just don't eat it with meat.
Yeah, that's the idea. And look, if you understand the dangers of food in the desert, how quickly it can rot, how easy it is to get trichinosis from pork, kosher dairy dietary restrictions make sense if you're living as a wanderer in the desert of the Middle East. But it doesn't necessarily make sense if you're living in Athens or Rome. So because I talked about this in September and August, what do we do? What do we do? We've got all these people who want to become Christians, but they don't want to become Jews. Paul prays on it, and he comes to the conclusion, you don't have to be Jewish in order to be Christian. You don't have to be circumcised. You don't have to keep kosher. You do have to reformat your life on the basis of Christian love. You do have to live as a Christian in thought, word, and deed. You have to try to change. You have to try to become a new person, a person who will turn the other cheek, a person who will give charitably, a person who will study God, a person who will forgive, even when they're being oppressed. That's hard enough. Most people, oh God, chastity? Christians are not supposed to view sex as a sport, as an entertainment, as sports entertainment, like professional wrestling. The Greeks and the Romans, by this point, viewed sex as just fun, 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 fun. And yeah, kids pop out, and as long as they're not, you're not in a noble family, it's not a big deal. I mean, you got to support them or sell them off to slavery, which a lot of people did. If you're in a noble family, of course, you got to make sure that the wife only has children with the husband, because those children have to be legitimate. Christians argue a new virtue, and that virtue is being chaste. In other words, don't have profligate, what is the word? Promiscuous sex, except within marriage, because sex is a means of procreating children. This is different. When you don't go to the Friday orgy, that offends people. I invited you to the orgy. If I didn't want you to come to the orgy, would I have invited? Of course I wanted you to come to the orgy. And did you come to the orgy? No. You said you don't do sex that way anymore. Well, la-di-da for you. Aren't you special? It irritates people. So, Paul's decision allows for Christianity to jump out of the Jewish world, leaving the Desposyni behind as a small minority within the Jewish community, and Christianity becomes a Greek and Roman faith. It becomes an Ethiopian faith. In the Persian Empire, it becomes an Nestorian faith. All because Greeks don't have to become Christians. I got to do one thing at a time. I can't do two things at a time, obviously. All because Greeks do not have to become Jews in order to become Christians. And then, 30 years after Jesus' execution, 35 years actually, in the late 60s AD, the Zealots finally lead their rebellion. And they kick the Romans out. And the Romans have to fight their way back in to Jerusalem. And General Vespasian and then his son General Titus, when Vespasian becomes emperor, lead this campaign. And they crush the Jews hardcore. A guy named Josephus, which is Joseph with the Roman us on the end because he ends up becoming a Roman. Josephus is in a zealot cell that's surrounded by the Romans. They're in a cave. And Josephus proposes that we have a suicide pact. We're going to kill ourselves and the Romans will come in and they won't have us because we'll already have taken our own lives. And glory to God. And everyone does it except Josephus. He tricked them. And then Josephus goes out and surrenders. This guy writes 2 books, The Jewish War and the Antiquities of the Jews, that we know of, which are to explain the Jews to the Romans. He ends up living as a Roman. And the thing is, we know this story from Josephus. It's not like he's proud of tricking his zealot friends, but he's not hiding the fact that he has problems and flaws, because it takes a special kind of scumbucket to say to your, revolutionary pals, "We got to kill ourselves. Let's do it." Harlech, Simon, and then you're the left. You're the only one left, and you go, "Okay." I mean, Cleopatra did this to Mark Antony. Cleopatra got Mark Antony to kill himself, and then she tried doing a deal with Augustus, or with Octavian, and only when she realized Octavian was not going to be seduced by her stuff did she kill herself. So this is a nasty thing to do. One of the most horrible things I ever heard about social media was from 4 or 5 years ago. In high school, there was this girl, and there was this sort of dorky guy who liked her. And she strung him along on social media, and then decided that she was going to have some fun. Flirty girl fun. So she convinces him that if he really loved her, he'd kill himself for her. And he did. I think she's rotting in prison.
Good.
She certainly should be. Frankly, in my opinion, she should ride the frickin' lightning. But that's a euphemism for being executed by the electric chair. Because that's nasty stuff. That's evil, dark stuff. By the way, if anyone ever says that to you, get away from them. They are diseased. They're sick. Oh, if you really love me. Well, I guess I don't. I guess I don't really love you. I'm going to go find something to love, like a puppy. Because, man. In any case, the Jews have their rebellion. The Romans march on Jerusalem. Titus commands the siege of Jerusalem, destroys the entire city, and destroys the Jewish temple. Now, Christians talk about Jesus predicting all of this when he said that there are people in this audience who will not die before they see this city laid low, before they see the temple of God brought low. And lo, the temple of God is brought low. And this is where the surviving zealots go to an old Herodian fortress near the Dead Sea, the fortress of Masada, on a plateau, on a mesa. And the Roman army spends years trying to get up there, and finally it builds this giant ramp and has a siege tower go up it. And the night before the Romans complete the ramp and break into the fortress, the zealots and their families, men, women, and children, all kill themselves. But this time there's no Josephus. No, they all die. And the Romans come in, and they're horrified by this bloodbath. And to this day, Masada is seen as a heroic site. Every officer of the Israeli Defense Force is sworn in on the top of Masada as a soldier and as an officer, because this is holy ground. This is considered holy ground where the Jews chose death over dishonor. So Christians had nothing to do with this. Christians as a group were not part of this rebellion. So from this point, Christians are not going to be listened to by the Jews, because the Jews think the Christians are a bunch of traitors, stinking traitors, lousy, rotten traitors, nasty traitors, pro-Roman jerks. Traitors. In case you didn't get that. Yeah. And for their part, the majority of the energy in the Christian faith happens as a result of moving into the Greek and Roman world. By this point, Peter had already gone to Rome, so had Paul. They had both been executed as a result of the Great Fire of the year 66, which we'll talk about. Basically, the Emperor Nero, who is the great artiste emperor, he is more creative than anyone. Listen to his songs. Nero wants to build a new palace, and there's a slum in the way. Oops, the fire starts in that very slum. And as Rome burns, Nero proverbially fiddles, singing his songs and waiting for the area to be cleared by fire so he can build a new palace. And the people of Rome clue into this. So Nero's got to find a way of deflecting blame. Oh no, it wasn't me, it was the Christians. The Christians did it. Those arsonists, those firebugs. Did Jesus say burn Rome? Yeah. So Christians are put on hooks on every street corner, covered in tar and lit on fire to be streetlights. This goes on for weeks. Okay? You walk the streets to burning bodies. I'm not exaggerating and I'm not joking. Nero did this. Christians are brought into the arena for the first time as a pregame show. Let's watch and see how hungry lions treat Christian men, women, and children. I'll give you an idea. The Christians enter through the mouth and they leave through the rear bodily orifice. It's horrible. Peter, when he's captured after the Great Fire, is sentenced to be crucified. And Peter says, please, 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 please don't crucify me like my master. I'm not worthy to die his death. Crucify me inverted. Crucify me upside down. And the Romans think this is freaking hilarious. And he's volunteering to be crucified upside down so his feet are at top and his head is at the bottom. Yeah, let's do this. And they do. Paul, who's a Roman citizen, is spared crucifixion, but he's beheaded, which is the traditional punishment of the upper class. The upper class doesn't suffer being hanged or being crucified or being eaten by lions. They just get their head chopped off. Yeah.
Romans would also starve pigs, and then they would cover them in tar, light them on fire, and then send them into enemy camps in war.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And the thing about pigs, they're not easy to look. We're talking European pigs, which include horned boars.
Yeah.
Okay. Boar hunting is probably the most dangerous sport engaged in by people in the Middle Ages. I'm saying including jousting.
Wow.
Jousting, you're riding a horse in full body armor with a blunted lance.
Looks so fun.
Yeah, there's no chance of getting hurt in that. Boar hunting was more dangerous than that. That the Romans did that, yeah, that showed they were clever.
And they put them in there for like...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm. So, wasn't good to be a Christian. So the Christians had already left the Jewish world psychologically. The Jews had left the Christians behind psychologically. The Desposyni were a remnant community of Christianized Jews that were left over, but basically history pretty much left them behind. And then, 50 years after the First Jewish War, the Jewish leader Simon Bar Kokhba comes along and says, I am the Messiah of God, and he is everything Jesus wasn't. He was a nobleman. He rode a horse well. He rode into Jerusalem on horseback, which means he comes to bring war. And he is supposedly a wizardly fellow who does miracles. And he leads, again, in the ruins of the last time the Jews rebelled, he leads another Jewish war that also kicks the Romans out for a while. And this is it. This is it. The Emperor Hadrian, who is one of the most sophisticated, civilized, nice emperors, the Emperor Hadrian, who shrinks the borders of Rome to build a bunch of walls so that Rome goes from the offense to the defense. The Emperor Hadrian, who loves a boy named Antinous, who dies young so much that he makes Antinous a god and builds a bunch of cities named after him. Hadrian, who is the first curly-haired emperor, not him, but his sort of great-granduncle. Hadrian, who has this reputation as a civilized traveler, orders that after the Jews are reconquered, they are to be dispersed. He exiles the Jews from anywhere within 50-mile radius of Jerusalem. This is the Great Diaspora. It's like the Babylonian captivity, only it lasts for 1,700 plus years. Actually, I think for 1,800 years. Because the Jews are forbidden to live in Judea anymore. They're gone. If they're found in Judea, they're going to be hunted down like animals. So Jews end up being scattered like tossing sand up on a windy day on a beach. You don't know where those grains end up. They become strangers in a strange land. They become minorities. And thus the history of Jews out in the world grows. Meanwhile, the Christian faith is undergoing a few changes of its own and we'll talk about those next time. Any questions, comments, or thoughts? I see none.
Oh,
Oh!
have you ever got sand thrown in your eye?
Yeah, it's obnoxious.
It's horrible.
It is.
Oh,
Don't do that.
oh yeah.
And don't let it be done to you. Bye.